Can you guys see the slides?
Yes.
Yeah. He fed me once. He's a nice dude.
And nothing else on my desktop, right?
No, nothing else.
Okay. Go to webinar. Drives me
stuff
crazy.
on the desk behind you, I can see, but
That's fine. The kids'
it looks
desk.
like a Nerf gun or something.
Those are their Kindle devices. They're just in a weird case.
Festive.
Yeah. We originally got them for when we went on a family vacation in New York City a few years ago, and they were about 3 and 5 years old. And Mike got a good deal on the whatever Kindles these are, Kindle Fires or something like that, and you kept them busy for the the 5-hour plane ride to and from.
Oof.
Yeah. Yes.
One ride for 2 of them.
Yes. At those ages especially.
Yeah, just taking one anywhere is like, oh God, really?
Yeah, we don't really go anywhere.
You have a really annoying
you
luggage.
anywhere is like, God, really, Eric? Jeez.
That's true, but at least there's like a grace period between it being annoying to take me anywhere and when I have my first drink.
Ah, there you go.
You have like some ramp up to when it sucks to have me someplace.
There's like 30 seconds there where everything's good. Like everything's good.
Best 30 seconds of your life.
No doubt, baby. No doubt.
I haven't thought of a witty name yet.
Oh.
Yeah, I got nothing on this one. Bad this week. I have like 2
I'm
minutes.
very creative, so I don't ever have a funny name like you guys.
Yeah, but
Nobody
you
ever understands my
you can be Tara. Me being Erik on the webcast stinks. You can be something fancy.
Almost time. We got a lot of questions at least.
Yes.
Some of them are a little long.
Yep. Some of them are not getting read. Go to dba.stackexchange.com. You person who typed a query. Lunatic. Crazy person.
Dimitri asked, aren't they selling them Kindle Fires by 6-packs these days? I have no idea. My kids are now 9 and 7, so the New York City trip would have been about 4 years ago. So things have certainly changed.
Wow. When are you coming back?
That was an expensive trip, I tell you that.
Expensive
That
life.
was, I don't know, $400 flights for each person. You have 4 of us, and the hotel, and we stayed there over a week. We needed to get to the East Coast to go do something in Pennsylvania. So I was like, I don't want to just fly to Pennsylvania, so let's also hit up New York City on the way. So we did that first, and then did our thing in Pennsylvania. It was a good trip, but I wish I had done it without kids. It would have been more fun.
Yeah. Everything is more fun without kids. Everything. Even just like walking to like the corner is more fun.
Yes. Yeah.
Like you get to have an entire thought process without like I want or I need.
Ron said that ship sailed, Tara. Yep, that ship has sailed. Got the kids and have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Love the kids, but yeah, things are easier.
Yeah. Today's mine's 4th birthday. This very day.
Oh, today? Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Happy birthday to Rose.
Yeah. 4 years ago.
1 more year till kindergarten time, man.
Oh, thank God. I can't wait to have just quiet for like several hours. Yes.
Well, you could do what we do and just keep them home all day.
Yeah,
Never have
lunatic.
anything quiet.
If I had an entire house, I might do that.
There you go. Yeah.
There's just this apartment.
He has a closet.
Yeah, it's a class.
My
Looks like we
closet
should get
locks now,
started.
which is. Oh God, yeah.
We're rambling over here.
Yeah,
well,
really.
16 on the East Coast.
Who's gonna read? Eric?
Yeah, I'll do it. I was just
I'll pick all the bad questions for Eric. That's what I would do. So.
I don't know. Okay, let's start at the top. I'll think of a funny name along the way. All right, let me give me a few seconds to buffer. All This is a question about indexes. Who's on
Sorry,
call?
it's now on vibrate.
Tara's on call for her secret DBA job that she doesn't want to tell us. A real job.
Yes. This one doesn't pay enough.
Got to get that second paycheck in. All right. In the event that I create a non-clustered index that needs the clustered index column, is it a problem to go ahead and add it even though I pick it up as a secret column? I want to add the clustered index for housekeeping purposes so it's evident in the definition, but I'm not sure if it causes any issues.
I've wondered that. I mean, it doesn't make a difference. It's going to get added regardless. I don't add them to the non-clustered index. You know, who cares if they're secret, as long as DBAs and developers know that that's what's happening. You know, you don't need it in there for explanation reasons.
See, but that's where you go wrong.
Okay.
Developers don't understand that it's there.
That's true.
Explain indexes to you.
Maybe they don't even need to know that, though. Do developers need to know about the secret columns?
If they're writing a lot of queries, it would help, right? I mean, them to understand, hey, use the index, follow the indexes, and all that other stuff. I never used to put them in there because I understood that they were there implicitly. Yeah. But then someone called, what was her name? Kendra Little. She brought up a good point that, sometimes, clustered indexes change and things like that. And so if you don't put it in there, that whatever column was there, it's going to go away, and then everything just kind of may not work the same way. So go ahead and explicitly put them in there, so that way, in case your cluster index changes, it's always there.
Well, there's also another interesting part to that, where when you pick up the clustered index column, is it like implicitly is involved in the non-clustered index? It's not part of the key of the index. Right. I believe it's just like sitting at the leaf level somewhere. It's not in the key. So if you need that clustered index key column to do something additional within the index, then I'd probably want to have it as a key column, right? So like if you had to like join or filter on it or do something else, I would want that to be right up in the key of the index. There's no penalty for having it there. It's not going to be in both places. But I think that, especially if my query is using the clustered index key columns, I would want to have it as part of the non-clustered index definition. It depends on the queries, as usual.
I put them in by default now, so that's just my answer.
Wow, look at you, big boy.
Yeah, man.
Congratulations.
Yeah, because I can't ask you to design a database. That can't happen.
No, you can ask me to fix it. Just I won't design it. I can fix all sorts of stuff. I just can't design them. I'm a good janitor. I'm not a good construction worker. All right, let's see here. Let's go to the next question. I'll buffer this one a little bit too. A user has been complaining about query timeouts, which when reviewing our monitoring tool looks like high concurrent other user activity querying a specific table. I recommended for them to increase the timeout setting on their app's end. Anything on my DBA end that can also help? I don't think so. Make your server better so the queries run faster. Figure
out what the root cause is. JH also asks, isn't it true that the timeout setting is unlimited on the SQL Server side? And that part is true, but I'm not sure that your reaction should be to increase the application's timeout value. Maybe there are some queries that need a longer timeout value, and you can set that specific one to need to have a higher one. But as far as the connection string goes, I would leave it, and then from a DBA perspective, figure out if you need to add any indexes, you need to fine tune the query. So you ask on your DBA, is there anything that can help? Take a look at the execution plan and see where that leads you.
Sounds good to me. All right. Michelle, I think I'm saying that right. Michelle asks, can you explain fill factor? Yes. Tara loves fill factor.
Fill factor drives me crazy on these for the clients that have lowered the fill factor, and then the column that's in the index is just the identity column. And I just don't see why this is being done, because there's no reason to have anything but 100% fill factor for identity columns. So fill factor is when you have free space on a page, if it's lower than 100% or 100 and 0 are the same thing. And this allows you to be able to do inserts into the page if there's free space in there without having to do a page split. And page split is when you have a data page that is full and you need to insert a row in between, and you're inserting a row in between because of the clustered index. It's sorted by the key, and so it has to do a page split. It creates another page, and it keeps 50% of the rows on one page and 50% of the rows on the second page, and then it can do the insert into the proper order. So lowering the fill factor can reduce page splits, but page splits don't happen when you have an identity column. So, and then when you rebuild your indexes, you're going to get back the fill factor. So after the page split happens, eventually that page might fill up as well, and then you rebuild the indexes later at some point if you're doing that kind of maintenance, and you get that free space back.
Fill factor isn't preserved when you insert or do anything else to your indexes. Fill factor is only preserved after you rebuild an index, which is something that not many people know about.
I don't like seeing servers that have set the fill factor to a lower number. I think that if you are going to lower the fill factor, it should be on an index by index basis only. Never set a lower than a 100 is it at the server level or database level? I can't remember which one it is, but don't lower the server level or database level. Do it at the index level. And really, one of the only times that this should be happening is on GUIDs. Don't use GUIDs.
Oh, GUIDs.
Well,
it's hard. What I always say, it's easy to run out of ints. It's hard to run out of GUIDs. So if you're concerned about having, what's the big int max, Richie?
Pretty gigantic.
It's a guy followed by every other number repeated twice.
I don't know that anyone needs that. I think that GUIDs should be used when you have to keep the uniqueness across servers, different types of servers, such as, say, a TIBCO queue or something else, even just SQL Server instances. You need to keep that row unique amongst different servers and not just this one SQL Server instance. I don't think that using the GUID is a good choice when it's just on that server. That you need to
we have new architectures coming out, as we do in the developer space. And some of those need consistent GUIDs going across processes, especially in microservices, right? So as a microservice, I need an ID that it doesn't overwrite something else. So that kind of follows from service to service to service to service, and how that makes those hops. So it's tough not to have kind of a GUID in there. Maybe it's not your clustered index, but it's probably going to need to be in a database somewhere.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. Is that a lot of times when you have the GUID that you need for that uniqueness, you don't have to have it as the clustered index. You can have a non-clustered primary key as the GUID, just to have the uniqueness there and have an index on that. But you can have the clustered index on a totally just depend-only surrogate key like an ID column or based on a sequence, next value hanging out in there. Anyway, let's move on.
I did that
Christopher,
a couple weeks ago. Look at that. Look at me. I'm amazing.
Stop stealing my ideas.
I'm awesome.
Pretending you use my ideas and you're good at something. Develop me a
If I don't
glass of
pretend, it's not going to happen, man. Come on.
All right. Christopher has a question. He's looking to replace his SQL 2014 Enterprise server with a shiny new 2016 server, and he wants to know if he can use mirroring between 2014 and 2016 to minimize downtime.
You can, you just can't go back. You can, it just, if you ever do fail over, you can't go back to the 2014 instance using database mirroring's failover. I've certainly done it, but or I should say I haven't used database mirroring for my upgrades. I've just done custom log shipping. Just get the full backup restored, maybe apply a differential, get the log chain, in place, and then at the time of the maintenance window, do the final log backup, and then restore that final one on 2016. So I like that method, but yeah, database mirroring, works as well.
I've used mirroring and log shipping for migrations between versions. I don't have a favorite in either case. Mirroring is nice because you can set it to asynchronous and not have to babysit anything. And just when you're ready, set it to synchronous and do your manual pushover. Log shipping is nice because it does some of the work for you. Log ship like availability groups. For some reason, I don't know why mirroring doesn't do it as part of the wizard. Mirroring doesn't initialize anything for you. Like with log shipping, it's like, do you want us to initialize this? And you're like, yes. I want you to take that back up and do a restore for me because I'm lazy. Mirroring doesn't for some reason. Mirroring's just like, did you do it, dummy? Hey, dummy, did you do it? And you're like, don't know what I did. But so I like log shipping just for that. Plus, log shipping's so old and bulletproof.
Trusted, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't have a favorite between the two, aside from a few setup quirks. But either way, like Tara said, it is a one-way migration. So if you do your failover, don't let users in immediately. Do some smoke tests. Have like some QA devs ready to try their stuff out and make sure all their connection strings and all that garbage works. And then when you're ready, then release the Kraken. But until then, because it's much less painful to have to just reinitialize mirroring or log shipping to the server again if the smoke test doesn't work than it is to try and migrate new user data back, and if there's identity columns and parent child tables. It's terrible. Anyway. Michelle, another question from Michelle. Do you have a go-to script for I/O tests? No, there are tools like Crystal Diskmark and DiskSpeed, which are much better for I/O tests. If you're looking for just the SQL DMV one, SP Blitzfirst, if you download SP Blitzfirst from firstresponderkit.org, you can run SP Blitzfirst either since startup, then it will look at some of SQL's internal DMVs to tell you about I/O stuff, or you can run it for a sample to tell you about I/O stuff. But if you just want to do a pure test of your disk, Crystal Diskmark and DiskSpeed, there are blog posts on our site about both of them, and that's where I usually go when I need to test a disk. When I wanted to test my brand spanking new fancy 1 terabyte M2, I used Crystal Diskmark, and I made clients feel bad. Unfairly, because I was like, look how fast this is compared to how you do things.
Let's see. Your desk?
Yes. When you say it like that. Reese has a question. Is there a way to get a rough estimate of how long an index operation will take to complete?
Test it. Store the database on a test server and test it.
Yeah, and when it's in flight, not really. It's unfortunate. Not really.
Not like it would be right? I mean, you can see that little progress bar, and then it stops at 96, and you're there for 2 days.
It hangs out. I'm like,
yeah.
Nestor asks, do you guys ever recommend using plan guides? Do you ever troubleshoot performance issues with plan guides?
I do. I've implemented them in production out of necessity. So when we at a company, we were migrating from SQL Server 2005 to 2012, and as part of that upgrade, we changed the clustered index of the core table of this critical system, and that's because the clustered index was pretty wide, and that's what we needed on SQL 2000, and we wanted to go to, say, it wasn't an identity column, but something else. So as part of the upgrade, we did that. Well, once we let the production users in after the upgrade, suddenly performance was really, really bad. And we realized that the execution plans weren't picking this great index. So we converted that clustered index to non-clustered, so it was still there. But now the execution plans, they were not selecting that index. And we proved that via index hints that index was very helpful for a lot of queries. So rather than adding index hints in the store procedure code, which we did, this was all of our own custom code, so we could have added the hints directly into the store procedures. We decided to use plan guides, and so we tied a plan guide to the store procedures that told it to go ahead and use this index, or sometimes we did the optimize for. It just depended upon what was needed. So I've definitely used them. I think only one time I talked about it with a client, and that's just because we were trying to override Dynamics AX's choice of using the optimize for unknown, and so we don't when you don't have ownership of the code, the store procedure code, you shouldn't be touching, adding index hints in there. But attaching a plan guide, might be something that you can do. But just be warned when you do put a plan guide on vendor code, that when the vendor application gets upgraded, you're going to want to drop those plan guides, because otherwise they won't be able to alter the store or drop and recreate the store procedure. They'll get an error.
Yep, what she said. She's smarter than me.
Yeah,
I'm like, yes.
Well, this was one of the guidance of a Microsoft engineer that we had flown in for this major upgrade that we were doing, just in case we ran into problems. And so after the upgrade, he did training with us and stuff. And so we had him on site and looking at our production issues. And it was, he's the reason why we put plan guides in place. And after that, I knew what to do.
Cool. I think the key to your entire statement there is when we had to. right? It's
That's
not like
true.
the first thing. It's
No,
not the second
yes.
thing. This
Right.
is like the very
It's
last
the
thing we need to do is put a plan
Yes.
guide on. There's nothing
Yeah.
else. That's when we do the plan guide.
True that. All right. Brian has a question about, well, it's not really about temp tables. It's more about CTEs. And so last week we talked about using temp tables to avoid mega join queries. And Brian is asking if it will be better to use a common table expression rather than a temp table. And if not, why? Does anyone have an opinion on this matter?
Oh, sometimes I think CTEs make things a little harder to read than easier to read.
Yes, it certainly do.
So there you go. That's my answer.
All right.
And I like using temp tables when you've got a large query that's getting a compilation timeout. So then breaking apart a lot of those joins and putting that stuff into temp tables and then just joining to the temp table can avoid your compilation timeout. When you get a compilation timeout, you might not have gotten the best execution plan for your query. You got just whatever was the best so far.
Yeah, and I could put indexes on those temp tables too if I really need them. So that adds something else.
It's true. When you start joining a lot of tables together, you may have optimal indexes for some joins, but not for all of them. And then if your query from the final product of those requires different indexes, well, you don't want to have 100 indexes on your table just to satisfy all these weird edge cases. Sometimes it's better to dump stuff to, especially like for stuff like paging queries. There are plenty of times where there are perfectly good use cases for CTEs or using offset fetch or using top with CTEs or offset fetch to do paging queries. Other times, if you are letting people order by mounds of different columns on the result, you are better off dynamically creating temp tables and indexes so that you can support that ordering on a smaller set of data. For me, though, with CTEs, it comes down to a couple other things. One, CTE results aren't materialized. So if I'm accessing the results of the CTE multiple times, it has to execute that code multiple times.
I didn't realize that until you talked about that yesterday with the client. So that was interesting information. So if you are going to be calling that CTE table query multiple times, throw that into a temp table to avoid running that multiple times.
Yeah, one of the first goofy blog posts that I wrote on this site is called CTE's Inline Views and What They Do, and I'll throw that link into the old chatterbox so that you can reference that. But yeah, it's a blog post just about what happens if you reference a CTE multiple times with joins or something. What happens is that code re-executes. So CTEs, while they are sometimes good, especially with the top operator for giving SQL a bit of a performance pathway or whatever you want to call it, they also do have their problems. They're not perfect. Oracle has syntax.
Like the fact that oh, good.
Oh, I was going to say Oracle has syntax to materialize a CTE, which I wish SQL Server did as well.
Gotcha.
But for now we have temp tables, which are perfectly good for materializing sets of data.
I feel like the fact that it does re-execute the query if you are using it multiple times, that could lead to weird issues where data has come in and the first time you accessed it, it didn't have this, and now it does, and so for that reason, I would definitely use a temp table if you're going to be having to query it multiple times.
Sure.
Unless, of course, you're using RCSI, and then it's just going to look at the snapshot, I would assume.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. Who knows? Let's see here. Let me see if I can figure out a short way to ask this. I'm getting a tempdb spill on one of my queries that I can't seem to fix. I'm doing a self-join, which tallies up a running total from previous days. And you can't figure out how to get rid of a spill. Well, the only way to fix a spill is with indexes. You want to it depends on what's spilling. You have to follow up on that if it's a sort or a hash spill or whatever else. Victor asks, and I'm just going through in order now. I have a proc whose plan was somehow cleared from the cache. The first execution of the plan causing parameter sniffing and high parallelism. CPU of 100% for 40 minutes. Wow. When this runs in an environment, maxstop is help, but should I optimize for unknown along with maxstop? So when would you use optimize for unknown?
Never. I know that we say that, use it sparingly or rarely. My answer is never. I mean, there's just better ways of doing things, Figure out what is best, how it runs best for most executions of the parameter values. See if optimized for a value, is helpful, or maybe an index hint, but optimized for unknown. You're getting a mediocre execution plan, maybe. So it does guarantee that you'll have, is it that the duration of the queries will be about, not the duration of the queries, that the consistent execution, is that what it is?
Yeah, so like rather like much like using a local variable, it will use the density vector.
That's right, yeah.
To give you a row estimate. So if your data, see, here's the thing that sucks about optimize for unknown. If your data is already so uniform that optimize for unknown fixes your queries, you don't need optimize for unknown in the first place. You just need better indexes. If your data is so skewed that sometimes optimize for unknown is good and sometimes it's not, then you need better index. You need better statistics at that point. At that point, you're looking at either filtered indexes or filtered statistics to try and help out things along the way. Optimize for unknown is one of those really dangerous things because as your data changes, unknown stops being, a good flat estimate. Sometimes data just turns into a whole. Sometimes optimize for unknown turns into a whole different backfiring mess. Depending on how often the code runs, I may just want to throw a recompile hint on there. If that's especially if that's for some reason harder than adding an index, I would much rather have a recompile hint if it's not a frequently executing piece of code.
I've even put the option recompile on queries that were executed frequently, just because we had the CPU overhead to do that.
Yep.
All right. Here's a question for Tara.
Uh-oh.
What pager texting on-call software do you guys use?
And I don't.
Free?
So the first company where I was, in an on-call rotation was at Qualcomm, and we just had so many people in IT that we just made our own. So we didn't purchase one or use a free one. We just created our own. And then the last job, we didn't use software. The NOC just reached out to, we had a list, and the NOC just reached out to whoever was on call that week.
Knock, knock, knocking on Tara's door. All right.
So, Eric, why don't you give your phone number out there? Because that's what we do. It ain't problems. We just call Eric.
1-900 Mix-a-Lot.
And kick those back to you, Eric.
All right. Well, Dave has sort of a follow-up to his question. How do I deal with tempdb spills without drastically changing my query, if possible? All right. Any volunteers on that?
I'll let you take that.
No. All right. So without changing your query, so tempdb spills happen most frequently for 2 operators and sometimes for 1 operator. Most frequently, it's a sort or a hash operation. So a hash join or a hash aggregate will most frequently cause a tempdb spill. You can see it sometimes with parallel exchange operators. Sometimes those will spill out, but not too often. For sorts, you need to have an index that supports whatever sort you're doing, so it doesn't spill. That's one way to help. For hash joins, again, hash joins get used frequently when the lead column of the join, when the columns involved in the join are not lead columns and indexes that SQL is using, and so SQL kind of makes this horrible guess how many rows are going to be coming in for the hash operation. So without drastically changing your query, change the indexes. Change the indexes so that you are no longer doing things that require sorts. Like sometimes if your data is medium-sized, SQL might choose a merge join and just insert a sort into the plan because it thinks that based on how many rows it's getting back, it's going to be cheaper to pre-sort data and do a merge join than a hash join. So also the most common is because there's a weird sort or hash in your execution plan. And the only way to really get a grip on those is with indexes. Or with the right indexes, I guess. All right. Graham asks, I have a vendor who changes the recovery model There you go.
Yay.
From full to simple without informing us. Well, because where I work is cheap, I've created custom monitoring to report when database attributes are changed. Anyway, how do I get this special vendor to stop changing the recovery model?
Why do they have access? You know, if they're
that's
doing
crazy.
that, I'm assuming they've hired a third-party DBA company, and so that company is helping out. I don't know, but you know, maybe you need to question their experience level if they're doing that, because that's breaking your RPO. You've lost recovery points when it gets switched to simple. You can't restore a full backup in the entire transaction log chain if it went from full to simple. You have to do a full backup once you switch to simple. Once you switch back to full, so you can start that log chain again. So I would talk to the vendor and maybe management to say, this is an inexperienced person touching my system, and we can't hit our RPO goal because of this.
Sounds good to me. Doug asks, can you suggest any tools for helping interpret execution plans? Interpreting execution plans, no. Getting more information, more or better looking information, is kind of the realm of Plan Explorer. Century 1 Plan Explorer. As far as interpreting them, you know, that's a highly personal thing. That's just something you have to learn.
They've got books for that.
They do. Grant Richie has a good book on. It's like
Yes.
I think it's like free to download from either Simple Talk or Redgate or something.
Is that book free? I don't. Maybe.
They have a free download of it. I think like the previous edition is free, and then the newest one is paid for.
Oh.
Something like that. I know that Redgate or Simple Talk has had his Reading Execution Plans book available for download before. I don't know if they still do. Maybe they don't. But I remember at one point getting it from them.
One more. Let's go. One more.
All right. A friend of mine has had his DBCC CheckDB cause his SAN to restart random vhost. He expects performance degradation and not stability issues. Have you guys seen anything like this? Not looking for a solution, just experience.
I haven't seen that specific, or it's restarting servers that are pointed to the SAN, but I know that I've worked with large corporations that have dedicated SAN staff, and they would come to us and say, what are you doing in the middle of the night that's causing so much I/O load? And it was always CheckDB that was running, so they could definitely see a spike, but our hardware could support it. It didn't cause other servers to restart. So CheckDB is a very important task that needs to be done. If your SAN is causing random host to restart, you need to get a better SAN.
Right. So I've actually had this happen to a physical computer before, and the reason that it was happening to me was running DBCC CheckDB on a 5 or so terabyte database. This was on 2008 R2, and what would happen is because we had 512 gigs in there, but max memory was set a touch too high. Max memory was set to like 500 gigs or something. We had to knock it down to 450. Because for some reason, when DBCC CheckDB ran, it would just swallow memory and Windows would give up. So it could be a memory issue. I would want to make sure that data and memory were as close to even as possible, or better than they are now. Maybe, I don't know. That's a tough one to troubleshoot from afar, but that's one thing that I've seen. But that was a physical host, not a VM. Anyway, we are at the 45 mark.
Here's a quick question for you though.
No.
What is SQL Intersection in Orlando? Sounds like fun.
It's a conference where everyone learns stuff and then goes and does Vegas things. That's all I know because I haven't been.
Well, this is
I haven't been
Orlando,
either.
so they go and do Orlando things, I guess.
Oh, well, I thought it was
That's
Vegas.
right.
Never mind.
Aren't there
One
two?
in Vegas.
Yeah, there's one in Vegas and one in Orlando. The one in Mays in Orlando.
Yeah,
'cause,
which Brent is speaking at. So
Yeah, go meet Brent.
They've got some really good
Absolutely.
speakers at SQL Intersections.
yeah, it's a very curated list. They don't bring just anybody. They really bring the best of the best there. It's pretty good.
And it sounds like SQL Intersections is more about the learning, whereas PASS is a lot about networking.
Community, stuff like that. Hanging out.
Yep.
Beer. All right, that's enough.
Board games.
I'll see you guys next week for office hours, hopefully. Thank you for showing up, and goodbye.
Bye.